And Shalom Israel. Yahweh Bashim Yahushua Baraka Thumb to the brothers watching. Yahweh Shemal Thumb Bashim Yahushua to the sisters watching. This is the ISUPK started out of 1 West, 125th Street, Harlem, New York, under Commanding General Yohana. It's Precinct Officer 500, Hawamar, ISUPK, Kentucky. And tonight, for our Monday night history class, we finna get into part 2 of my Black History Month series. Now, like I said last week, if you didn't catch it, Baba Kushai, if I may, go ahead and check it out. I was talking about the civil rights movement. This week, we're going to be getting into all Black towns and Indian territory. And like I said, Lord willing, all month long, the whole month of February, I'm finna break down real Black history for y'all. All right, I'm finna break down real Black history for y'all. So tonight's topic is Black towns and Indian territory. All right, Black towns and Indian territory. All right, because whether you know it or not, the majority of all Black towns in America was in Indian territory. All right, the majority of America's all Black towns were in Indian territory, which was Oklahoma. So before we get into it, I want to invite every so-called Black, Hispanic, or North American Indian to tune into our weekly content. All right, Monday night history class. Tuesday night brotherhood class taught by Officer of 1,000. I'm a Wonga boy. All right, Wednesday night law class taught by Officer of 1,000, ISUPK. And Wednesday night is a podcast. All right, the baddest podcast around, Cry Out, Spirit Out podcast, hosted by Officers of 1,000. I'm a Wonga boy and ISUPK. And come in here, these powerful priests of the Lord give the biblical breakdowns and the biblical solution to all of the viral videos going across the internet. All right, so ISUPK, Kentucky, under Commanding General Yohana. All right, Black History, Part 2, Black Towns and Indian Territory. Now, like I said, whether you know it or not, the majority of America's Black towns, America's all Black towns, were in Indian Territory. All right, and I want y'all to keep this in mind. Keep this in mind. Oklahoma is Indian Territory. All right, Oklahoma is Indian Territory, and this is where the majority of America's all Black towns were. All right, Seminole Wars, 1816 to 1858. This is important because we're going to talk about how people got into Oklahoma in the first place. All right, how groups of people got into Oklahoma, into Indian Territory in the first place. All right, Seminole Wars, 1816, 1858. All right, fought the United States Army in an attempt to resist relocation to the West. The Indian Removal Act, beginning in 1830, meant the dispersal of their people to Oklahoma, Mexico, and Texas. All right, this is how you see your Seminoles end up in Oklahoma. All right, the Seminole Scouts or Indian Scouts were hardly distinguishable racially from soldiers of the U.S. colored troops. Now, the U.S. colored troops were Black people that fought for the Union Army in the Civil War. All right, U.S. colored troops were all Black infantry that fought for the Union in the Civil War. Now, the Seminole Scouts, these were a group of people on the Texas frontier that fought against the Apache. All right, during the Indian Wars. But it said the Seminole Scouts or the Indian Scouts were hardly distinguishable racially from the U.S. colored troops. All right, and with whom they shared a distinctive cultural traits of the Southern Negro. So what is it saying? It's saying these Seminole Indians, these people that were relocated west into Oklahoma, Mexico, and Texas, it says that they were hardly distinguishable from the U.S. colored troops and shared a distinctive cultural traits with the Southern Negro. What is it saying? This is another proof of what the ISUPK has been saying since 1969. That so-called Blacks, Hispanics, and North American Indians are the same race of people. Let's walk. Here's your Indian scouts on the left, your Seminole scouts on the left, U.S. colored troops on the right. Again, showing, what the UPK has been saying since 1969, that blacks, Hispanics, and North American Indians are, in fact, the same people. And it said shared some of the cultural traits. All right, next source. It happened on the exploratory day in the Chickasaw Nation. The Chickasaw is another group of people, all right, that left out of Mississippi, parts of Alabama, also ended up in Oklahoma. All right, it says in the far-flung corner of Oklahoma, when I cracked open a self-published cookbook and was shocked by the familiarity of the recipes within. The grits, the cornbread, the sweet potato pie, the chicken and dumplings in the cookbook looked like a replica of my mother-in-law's family recipes in South Alabama. Look, the Indians of the Southeast, all right, the Indians of the Deep South, what did it say a second ago? It said it shared the same culture as the so-called Negro in the South. All right. If you ever wonder what some of the cultural practices of the Indians in the South are, all right, one of the first things we learn about culture is the food growing up. And we see that so-called blacks and so-called North American Indians have the same culture when it comes to food, especially in the South. Let's walk. All right, the winter 1830, the Choctaw began migrating to Indian territory along the Trail of Tears. We talked about the Seminole. We talked about the Chickasaw and the Choctaw. All right, 1830, the Cherokee were forced to leave their homes and move to Oklahoma. The 800-mile journey became known as the Trail of Tears. Now, the topic of tonight's class is all black towns in Indian territory. So we got to slow walk this thing, how groups of people ended up in Oklahoma in the first place. 800-mile journey became known as the Trail of Tears. All right, and Andrew Jackson's Indian Removal Act of 1830 required the Chickasaw, along with all the other, let's just say Southeastern American Indian tribes, to move to Western Territory. The Chickasaw were the last tribe to be withdrawn to Oklahoma Territory. So the tribes that went to Oklahoma Territory are what they call the 5 civilized tribes. The ones that went under George Washington's Civilization Act. These were the Chickasaw, the Choctaw, the Creek, the Cherokee, and the Seminole, the so-called 5 civilized tribes. All right, this act also had effect of reclassifying American Indians who chose to remain on their land as Negroes, making them vulnerable to further discrimination and violence in the South. So we have 2 instances in the last 5 minutes where it compared North American Indians to so-called black people. All right, 2 instances in the last 5 minutes, 2 sources in the last 5 minutes that just compared so-called North American Indians to so-called black people. All right, let's walk this down further. Again, topic of tonight's class is all black towns in Indian territory. All right, Black History Part 2, all black towns in Indian territory. And again, it just compared the 5 civilized tribes to so-called black people. All right, Tulsa's origins begin with the removal of the Creek Indians from their ancestral homes in Georgia and Alabama. Arriving in 1833, the Creek Indians began building the city of Tulsa after a negotiation with the Cherokee over boundaries. Now, what do we know about Tulsa? We know about Tulsa as Black Wall Street. Now, Salakia, for some of y'all that's seen some of these slides before, I did a class last year. I did a class last June, as a matter of fact, June 2024, over the American Indian involvement in Black Wall Street. If I may go ahead and check that out, ISUPK, Kentucky. All right, Tulsa, Oklahoma. All right, the home of Black Wall Street. It says Tulsa's origin began with the removal of Creek Indians from their homes in Georgia and Alabama. Arriving in 1833, the Creek Indians began building the city of Tulsa after negotiation with the Cherokee over boundaries. All right, Tulsa's origins. All right, the building of the city of Tulsa was built by Creek Indians after 1833. All right, Oklahoma, home to more historically all black towns than any other U.S. state. All right, between the late 1800s, early 1900s, there were 50 black towns established in Oklahoma. Now, we just read about the people who were dispersed into Oklahoma. In this time period was between 1830 and 1840. We just read about these groups of people who were dispersed into Oklahoma. Now, it says here 50 all-black towns were established in Oklahoma. These towns were founded by Black American settlers who pooled their resources to purchase land and create self-sustaining communities. All right, in fact, as early as the mid-19th century and through the turn of the 20th, Black Americans settled over 20 towns throughout Oklahoma, more than any other U.S. state. All right, so we had more all-black towns in Oklahoma, aka Indian Territory, than any other U.S. state. All right, the founders of these towns aimed to create spaces where Black Americans could live free from racial discrimination, establish businesses, and own property and govern themselves. Now, we just read about the 5 civilized tribes, the 5 groups of Indians that were forcefully removed out of the South, sent to Oklahoma. We just read how these groups of Indians have a cultural affiliation with so-called blacks, all right, the so-called biblical tribe of Judah. And we just read 2 instances where you see a racial comparison between so-called black people and so-called North American Indians. We also read a source that said that Indians that did not leave to Oklahoma, that chose to stay on their ancestral homelands, were reclassified as Negro as well. All right, these towns became hubs for entrepreneurship, education, and culture. All right, when we think of Oklahoma history, we tend to think of the Sooners, the oil boom, or the birth of Western swing music. The one unique feature of the state is its large number of historical all-black towns. Again, we read that Oklahoma had more black towns than any other state or any other territory in United States history. All right, oil and Indian Territory. Most Oklahomans know the history behind the title given to the city of Tulsa. Again, we're talking about Black Wall Street, oil capital of the world. All right, major oil strikes were made before the surrounding territory was even granted statehood. 1884, the Cherokee Nation passed a law permitting the organization of a company for the purpose of finding petroleum and thus increasing the revenue of the Cherokee. All right, the Cherokee are responsible for discovering oil in Oklahoma. The Cherokee Nation was responsible for the discovery of oil that made the foundation of Tulsa boom in the first place. All right, over the next 2 decades, Indian Territory will produce more wealth than all of the American gold rushes combined. Here's your source. All right, over the next 2 decades, Indian Territory would produce more wealth than all of the American gold rushes combined. We're talking about the origin of your all-black towns in Oklahoma and the origins of Tulsa and Black Wall Street. All right, Tulsa, a Creek Indian settlement, got a huge boost when the nearby Glenpool oil field was discovered in the early part of this century. Oil barons gave the town its Art Deco stamp and left behind a priceless legacy of art and architecture. All right, Tulsa, a Creek Indian settlement, got its boost when oil was discovered in the early part of the 1800s. All right, we're talking about the Creek origin, the Cherokee origin of Tulsa, Oklahoma. All right, all black towns of Oklahoma represent a unique chapter in American history. Nowhere else, neither in the Deep South nor in the Far West, does so many Black American men and women come together to create, occupy, and govern their own communities. From 1865 to 1920, Black Americans created more than 50 identifiable towns and settlements, some of short duration and some still existing at the beginning of the 21st century. All right, from 1865 to 1920, it says Black Americans created more than 50 identifiable towns and settlements. All right, keep those dates in mind. 1865 1920. Now, the next source is U.S. Census Bureau. It says 1 year after 1822 to 1889, Oklahoma land rush, the Indian Territory population was 258,000. Subsequent land rushes saw the territory's population grow. This event marked the first time non-indigenous people were allowed to settle on what would become Oklahoma. Now, we just read that black people had been starting settlements in Oklahoma since 1865. The United States Census says the first time you see non-indigenous people in Oklahoma was after 1889. So when it says you see black people in Oklahoma in 1865, we're talking about black Indians. All right. The people that were reclassified as Negro. The people that didn't have any racial differences between black people. The people that carried the same cultural traditions as black people in the South. All right. These black people that were in Oklahoma in 1865, we're talking about black Indians. Because it says right here, according to the United States Census, the first time you see non-indigenous people in Oklahoma is after 1889. Let's walk. All right, 1835, the treaty between the Cherokee and Osage Indians created Cherokee Outlet. Reservations existed until 1904, when the lands were allotted and added to Noble County. Cherokee Outlet became part of Oklahoma Territory and was divided into counties. After 1893, opening of Cherokee Outlet for settlement by non-Indians. So 1893 is the first time you see non-Indians in what was called Cherokee Outlet. Cherokee Outlet was that little small part of Oklahoma, that little small strip over Oklahoma, that was called Cherokee Outlet. And the first time you see non-Indians there was after 1893. So when we're hearing about black people in Oklahoma in the 1860s, we're talking about black Indians. All right. The settlement of Oklahoma's all-black towns is strictly tied to the Trail of Tears and forced removal of American Indian tribes, the southeastern part of the country, to Indian Territory. Again, we're talking about the so-called 5 civilized tribes and the Trail of Tears and the removal into Oklahoma Territory. All right, slaves of the 5 civilized tribes made the journey to Indian Territory as well. All black towns grew in Indian Territory after the Civil War, when the former slaves of the 5 civilized tribes settled together for mutual protection and economic security. So we're going to find out who these black people were. All right, so-called slaves that rode with the 5 civilized tribes. Let's find out who they were. All right, all black towns grew in Indian Territory after the Civil War, when the former slaves or freedmen of the 5 civilized tribes settled together for mutual protection and security. Let's find out who these freedmen were. All right, freedmen. The aim of this pictorial is to demonstrate that the domestic slave trade had reduced the ethnic Native American to African slaves for sale, and that they too had been given freedom or had been freed and or received benefit from emancipation by its effect upon the Indian nations to abolish slavery. When we're talking about freedmen in Indian Territory, we're talking about black Indians. When we're talking about freedmen in Indian Territory, we're talking about black Indians, and here's your proof. All right, Adam Grayson. All right, Muskogee Creek freedmen. All right, Moore Shepherd freedmen. And Carrie William Hall, Chickasaw free woman. Again, we just read about freedmen. We just read about black Indians establishing cities after 1865. But we also read that the first non-Indian didn't step foot into Oklahoma until after 1889. All right, black tribal members who were classified as freedmen by the Dawes Commission benefited from the allotment process. We're talking about after 1865. They were granted approximately 2 million acres of property, the largest transfer of land wealth to black people in the history of the United States. So the largest transfer of land wealth to black people in the history of the United States was in Oklahoma Territory, and it was granted to Indian freedmen, which we just read were black Indians. All right, these were your black people that were in Oklahoma Territory that was building these cities from the 1860s up until the late 1880s. And we don't see the first non-Indian in Oklahoma until after 1889. All right, we have people like B.C. Franklin, all right, a Choctaw tribal member who later became a prominent Tulsa attorney. Again, we're talking about Black Wall Street. And here's his law office in Tulsa, 1910. Again, we're talking about black Indians, all right, in the early stages of building these all-black cities or these all-black towns in Indian Territory. All right, after emancipation, freedmen who had followed the 5 civilized tribes on the Trail of Tears could now claim land. They migrated westward through Kansas, 1870s, 1880s, and then blazed Gurley's path through Oklahoma Territory in the 1890s. All right, O.W. Gurley was a black man that migrated to Oklahoma Territory in the 1890s. Again, we just read you don't see the first non-Indian in Oklahoma until after 1889. So it's saying that black Indians who were labeled freedmen by the Dawes Commission, they laid the path for people like O.W. Gurley who came later. Now, O.W. Gurley was the black man responsible, or the black man given the credit for Black Wall Street. He was known as the richest man in Black Wall Street for a time. All right, entrepreneurs in these communities started every imaginable kind of business, including newspapers, and advertised throughout the South for settlers. All right, O.W. Gurley was once the wealthiest black man and founder of the Greenwood District of Tulsa, Oklahoma. All right, he came in the 1890s, and we just read that black Indians or Indian freedmen are what laid the foundation. All right, laid the framework for people like O.W. Gurley and other black people that left the South in the 1890s and went into Oklahoma. All right, September 16th, 1893, the 25-year-old entrepreneur joined the Cherokee Outlet, running 50 miles before finally stopping at a plot of prairie grass. Standing on a plot of land with Emma, he staked a claim on what would soon become Perry, Oklahoma, one of the many towns advertised to blacks in the new territory. This was now we're talking about O.W. Gurley, the founder of Black Wall Street. All right, hearing about the oil, we just read that it was the Cherokee and the Creek that discovered the oil in Tulsa. It was the Cherokee and the Creek that made the deal over the territory in the first place. It was the Cherokee and the Creek that built the companies that established the oil. And again, we read that it was the largest explosion of wealth. That oil that was discovered in Tulsa by these Indian tribes created more wealth for these people than all of the gold rushes put together. All right, so O.W. Gurley sold his store in Perry and moved 80 miles to Tulsa in 1905, taking the second major risk of his young life. He bought a large tract of land on the north side of the Frisco train tracks, a barren plot, and he started to map out a city for upwardly mobile for blacks who, much like himself, were looking for opportunity. So we're talking about black Indians, we're talking about Indian freedmen and other blacks that left the South, and how these people all lived together to form these major black cities all through Indian territory. All right, the land run of 1889 brought black American settlers to the unassigned lands that now made up the state of Oklahoma. Newspapers began sprouting up in new communities, and the towns were advertised throughout the southern United States as promised lands for black settlers. All right, the land run of 1889 opened yet more free land to non-Indian settlement. For Black Americans from the Old South rushed to the newly created Oklahoma. Again, we read earlier that the first non-Indian, you don't see the first non-Indians in Oklahoma until after 1889. But prior to that, you had Black Indians building the foundations for these Black cities like Black Wall Street. All right, E.P. McCobb, a former state auditor of Kansas, helped found the Langston and encouraged Black Americans to settle in their all-Black town. All right, to further his cause, McCobb established the Langston City Herald, often by means of traveling agents throughout the South. McCobb hoped that his tactics would create an African-American political power bloc in Oklahoma Territory. So we're talking about seizing power in Indian Territory, seizing power in Oklahoma. And again, we read that Oklahoma had more Black towns than any area in the history of the United States. All right, Indian Territory had more Black towns than any other place in American history. Here's E.P. McCobb. All right, other Black American leaders had a vision for an all-Black state. Although this dream was never fully realized, many all-Black communities sprouted and flourished in the rich topsoil of the new territory. And after 1907, the new state, all right, Oklahoma Territory or Indian Territory becomes a state in 1907. But we were talking about building an all-Black state, all right, an all-Black ethno state, all right. And so-called Blacks and so-called North American Indians were building this thing together. All right, so-called Blacks and so-called North American Indians. Again, we read oftentimes you couldn't tell apart racially, and oftentimes shared the same culture, shared the same foods. And again, we were together seeking to build an all-Black state in Indian Territory. All right, in those towns, Black Americans lived free from other prejudices and brutalities found in other racially mixed communities of the Midwest and the South. All right, these all-Black towns, it says Black Americans live free from the prejudices found in racially mixed communities. This should tell you right here. That integration was a failure. This should tell you right here that integration was a failure. It says in Indian Territory, in Oklahoma, Black Americans live free from prejudices found in other racially mixed communities. Black Americans in Oklahoma and Indian Territory will create their own communities for many reasons. Escaping from discrimination would be a driving factor. All-Black settlements offered the advantage of being able to depend on neighbors for financial assistance and having the open markets for crops. Again, this should show you right here. This should prove how much of a failure that integration was. All right, Arthur Tolson, a pioneering historian of Blacks in Oklahoma, asserts that many Black Americans turn to ideologies of economic advancement, self-help, and racial solidarity. Not integration. Economic advancement, self-help, and racial solidarity. All right, Black towns in Indian Territory. It gives you a rundown here of all the Black towns, or some of the Black towns in Indian Territory. Again, starting in the 1860s. Now, what did we read earlier? That you don't see the first non-Indian in Oklahoma until after 1889. So these towns here, these Black towns here, were established by Black Indians. That's why you got to get your footing together. That's why you have to know chronology. When you know chronology and when things happen, can't nobody beat you in this. When you know chronology when you got your footwork together, can't nobody beat you in this. All right, here's some of the towns that still exist today. All right, for several decades, all black towns provided their residents with lives free of the regular racial brutality and prejudices often experienced by blacks living in racially mixed communities. Residents could depend and support on each other. Again, showing you the failure of integration. Unfortunately, after statehood in 1907, Oklahoma passed a series of laws and statutes that would become known as Jim Crow laws. All right, after Oklahoma gets statehood in 1907, once the United States takes over Indian Territory, they start to establish Jim Crow laws. And this was the beginning of the fall of these all-black towns in Oklahoma. Salakia. So again, after Oklahoma gets statehood in 1907, and the United States takes over and implements Jim Crow, we start to see the fall. We start to see the fall of these black towns in Indian Territory. All right, segregation laws are going into effect. This paved the way for Greenwood to become an insular hub for the black dollar to circulate. All right, so after 1907, when Oklahoma gets statehood and the white man starts to push his segregation laws, we started to tighten up in places like Black Wall Street. And it says many of the black residents spent their entire paycheck in Greenwood. All right, Greenwood, aka Black Wall Street. So when the white man got to pushing his segregation and his Jim Crow laws, we tightened up. And it says some people spent their entire paycheck in their own community. All right, the passage of many Jim Crow laws caused some black Americans to become disillusioned with the infant state. So again, we weren't down with this. We weren't down with this whole integration thing during this era. We were not down with this integration thing back in this era. So Salakia, we want to take a halftime real quick. We'll take a halftime for a few minutes. I will play a song right quick, and we finna get right back into it.
Fuck what them bitches gotta say. I'm a West nigga till they put me in the grave. I don't give a love fuck what them niggas gotta say. I'm a West nigga till they put me in the grave. I don't care about what they say. Hey. Fuck with my Akima, fuck with my sisters, then I got a problem, I'm never gonna miss you. I got 100 hanging out the AR, I got a 50 hanging out the pistol. He say it's corner, I'm just being realistic. I be on them corner posted with the realest. If it's the Sabbath, then we going fishing. I'm reeling them in, that's a God-given mission. I'm really on 10, but I'm stamped in the pistol. I get the order, be glad of this mission. Hebrew Academy graduate, nigga. Training, go through the baddest conditions. I don't fuck with none but the baddest of bitches. She righteous, submissive, she glad to be with me. Had that thing Putin like that, man, niggas. She know I'm a prophet, she glad to be listening. Disrespect, I ain't having that shit. Tell her go make some business from scratch. She bitchin' the different breed of black men. We don't do the back bend. I remember back when I was really trapping, trying to get the racks in, selling dope to black men. But now I'm trying to make it straight, like don't forget about my face. We standing up straight, can't fold us. Too heavy, the world won't hold us. Go this is a rank, I told you. Line up in these ranks, we soldier. You can take that to the bank, we focus on. How many times must we remind you? One body, one rest. One break off and never take off, that's a flex. When the law with your ain't no up next, it's just us, nigga, that's that on that. All that weak shit, that ain't no threat. Say you won't beat, bitch, with that ain't no sweat. We with all that. We with all that. The Lord called a nigga out the world, I responded and called back. Oh Lord. And everything that they stole from us, fuck that shit, we want all that. Them niggas snitching and they act like bitches. That's why we unaffiliated with them. They killing women and they fuck with sisters. That's why we unaffiliated with them. They telling lies, switching up the doctrine. That's why we unaffiliated with them. They ain't gon' ride until they die, so that's why we unaffiliated with them. Come on the command and general, your hunter, we unaffiliated with them. Like they tongue and they say they keep that shit 100, we unaffiliated with them. They telling lies, switching up the doctrine. That's why we unaffiliated with them. They ain't gon' ride until they die, so that's why we unaffiliated with them. That's why we unaffiliated with them. I cannot fuck around with fake niggas. We taking ground when we in your city. You better have the women, have the liquor. Keep that bitch on me, please don't butt the system. Don't be a fool and be another victim. Say you a goon, you just another Christian. How you my brother, you ain't in here with me. We in the gutter, deep down in the trenches. We with them niggas locked up in the prison. Black and Hispanic, Native American, Indian. We ain't just talking shit, but we living in it. We be everywhere, you can't miss it. And we be fresh as hell, take a picture. And we professional with the scriptures. Play, we gon' scratch them, yeah, we some killers. These nigga tripping, they mind blown. Swear business, forgive me if I'm wrong. I don't get it pause when niggas say that they be looking for niggas to slide on. The only slide that I know about is when I assemble the Glock with the slide on. Real, I get the order, you know that it's slaughter. See me and my niggas gon' die. The bigger, the better for kingdom of heaven. You niggas get wet up by me cause I'm fed up. I rep UPK. My niggas won't let up. Got choppers, got nines, AKs, Berettas. You say you don't like me, you say you won't fight with what me and my nigga like, bitch, or whatever. You say you don't like me, you say you won't fight with what me and my nigga like. My nigga like, them niggas snitching and they act like bitches. That's why we unaffiliated with them. They killing women and they fuck with sisters. That's why we unaffiliated with them. They telling lies, switching up the doctrine. That's why we unaffiliated with them. They ain't gon' ride until they die, so that's why we unaffiliated with them. Come on the command and general, your hunter, we unaffiliated with them. Like they tongue and they say they keep that shit 100, we unaffiliated with them. They telling lies, switching up the doctrine. That's why we unaffiliated with them. They ain't gon' ride until they die, so that's why we unaffiliated with them. Yeah. See, they always ask us like, why y'all fuck with such and such?
All right, let's get it up for Officer Nakawan. All right, Officer Nakawan, unaffiliated. You did what I'm talking about. All right, let's get back into it, y'all. I know I've been giving y'all a lot of info to process. Feel I give y'all a little quick intermission. But let's go ahead and get back on to it. All right, the passage of Jim Crow laws by the Oklahoma legislature immediately after statehood caused Black Americans to become disillusioned with the infant state. So again, what did this do? This caused us to tighten up. All right, this caused us to tighten up. And it said that a lot of people spent their entire paycheck in their own neighborhood. All right, imagine what that could do for our communities today if we spent our entire paycheck in our communities. All right, as greatly expected, Greenwood soon became a beacon of wealth, education, and advancement, rivaling areas like New York, Chicago, and Atlanta. Doctors, lawyers, and realtors flourished. Luxury hotels were built, and millionaires were minted. Greenwood was perceived as a place to escape oppression. By 1920, a walk through Black Wall Street meant traversing 35 city blocks, with the focus being the intersection of Greenwood and Archer. The Acme Brick Company supplied building materials for townhouses, apartments and theaters, and hotels that lined the streets. By 1910, Black bricklayers had their own trade union called the Hire Carriers. Entrepreneurs began to emerge. John Williams and his wife Lula built a confectionery store and the opulent Dreamland Theater. All right, here's the Dreamland Theater. All right, here's a picture of them rolling. What did it say, 1907? And they had one of the furs, didn't they? 1907, they had one of the furs from a confectioner store. From a confectioner store and a black movie theater. All right, Simon Berry built private transportation network of Model T Fords and buses, which transported residents through Greenwood all the way to downtown Tulsa. Berry soon began chartering planes for Tulsa's increasingly wealthy oil men. Now, we read earlier that it was the Creeks and the Cherokee were the ones that discovered the oil in Tulsa in the first place and built the original companies that extracted the petroleum out the ground and actually built the foundation for the city of Tulsa. All right, though the population was small, Greenwood also had two newspapers, including the Tulsa Star, founded by A.J. Smitherman. Others built pool halls, auto repair shops, beauty parlors, grocery stores, barbershops, and funeral homes. There was a YMCA, a skating rink, and a hospital. It was calculated that every dollar spent in Greenwood circulated the black economy nearly 30 times as business thrived. This is according to Forbes. All right, the black dollar circulated 30 times in Black Wall Street. All right, here's A.J. Smitherman. Along with this massive prosperity, the community invested in houses of worship and schools. By 1920, Greenwood had a handful of churches, most notably the Mount Zion Baptist Church, built in 1909. The district had its own elite high school, named after Booker T. Washington, which boasted a curriculum that would prepare students to eventually study at colleges like Columbia and other HBCUs like Tuskegee and Spelman. So important was education in upperly mobile Greenwood that teachers were amongst the highest paid workers. All right, teachers were amongst the highest paid workers in Black Wall Street. All right, many had their own Steinway pianos and apartments, while the school's principal, E.W. Woods, lived in a 6-bedroom townhome. Again, here's your source, Forbes. All right, here's E.W. Woods, the principal. All right, June 1st, 1918, J.B. Stratford, another mogul, opened a 54-room Stratford Hotel on Greenwood Avenue. It was the largest Black-owned hotel in Oklahoma and one of the few Black-owned hotels in the United States. All right, the Stratford Dining Hall had a gambling room, a saloon, a large hall for events. By 1920, Stratford had become the richest Black man in Tulsa, owning 50 rental properties and an apartment building along with the hotel. Here's J.B. Stratford. Here's his hotel. All right, then the violence came. All right, violence finally exploded in Tulsa, May 30th, 1921, when a Black shoeshine man named Dick Rowland was falsely accused of sexually assaulting a white woman, Sarah Page, in the elevator of a downtown office building. The next day, the story was prominently featured in the White Tulsa Tribune and Flaming Locals. All right, so another Black man falsely accused by a white woman. If you still want a white woman today, as a Black, Hispanic, or North American Indian man, if you still want a white woman today, you must be out your goddamn mind. All right, you must be out your goddamn mind. All right, a large mob formed around the jail in Tulsa, where Rowland was being held as rumors of a potential lynching circulated through Greenwood. A group of armed men marched to the jail to protect him. By the early morning of June 1st, the armed white mob had already started burning Greenwood to the ground. By 5 a.m., the mob began to assault Black Wall Street. Some eyewitnesses in accounts from the 2001 Commission to study the race riots in 1921 reported that kerosene bombs were dropped from airplanes to demolish buildings. And when the assault was over, as many as 50 whites and 200 Blacks were dead, and more than 35 square blocks had been destroyed. And here's an image of what was left of Black Wall Street. It says those who survived were rounded up by the National Guard and put in internment centers for many weeks up to months. Greenwood's total property loss was nearly $2 million, over $50 million in today's money. So the white man burnt down. The white man burnt down over $50 million in today's money in property loss and destruction. This man's got a lot of nerve for complaining about the incidences in the Breonna Taylor situation. All right here in Louisville, Kentucky, about property loss and damage. All right, when the so-called white man, the devil that the Bible speaks of, all right, he's committed some of the biggest crimes in regard and destruction of property and property loss. All right, it said Greenwood's total property loss is over $50 million in today's money. All right, after the destruction of Greenwood, surviving cities were rounded up and sent to internment camps. All right, most of the bodies were never recovered, presumed to have been buried in a mass grave that has still never been located. And no one was ever prosecuted or punished for the biggest racial massacre in American history. Now, I want y'all to think how heavy that is. I want y'all to think how heavy that is. All right. Our enemy, the so-called white man, the devil that the Bible speaks of, our open enemy, he's been getting away with this for a long time. All right. 1921 was when this race massacre took place. And it said nobody was ever prosecuted or punished for the biggest racial massacre in American history. All right, with nothing left of Black Wall Street, O.W. Gurley left Greenwood for L.A., where he died in 1935 with little indication of wealth. One of the richest men in Black Wall Street died broke. One of the richest men in Black Wall Street died broke. But here's a side of the story you might not have heard. All right, there was an organization called the African Blood Brotherhood. And these people were a group of Black communists who were associated with Marcus Garvey, who we also know was an agent and a white supremacist. All right, according to the New York Times, June 5th, 1921, that this organization of Black communists is believed to have fomented the race riot in that city. So not only do we have a white racist mob that's at fault, we also have a group of Black communists, again, that were affiliated with Marcus Garvey, who we know is a agent and a white supremacist, that were also involved in this race riot. We also have others who were involved and others who had blood on their hands from the biggest racial massacre in the history of the United States. I bet you ain't learned this in history class. All right, the events of the 20s and 30s spelled the end for most Black communities. All Black towns in Oklahoma were, for the most part, small agricultural centers that gave nearby Black American farmers a market. And the Great Depression devastated these towns, forcing residents to go west and north in search of jobs. These flights from Oklahoma caused huge population decrease in Black towns. Throughout the 1930s, many railroads failed, isolating a number of rural towns in Oklahoma and cutting them off from their market. As a result, many of the Black towns simply could not survive. And this is what caused the destruction. One racial massacre, again, the biggest racial massacre in the history of the United States, all right, caused the destruction, caused the trickle-down effect of what was once the home of more black towns in one spot in Oklahoma, in Indian Territory. This is what caused the destruction of all of these black towns in Oklahoma. Today, only 13 black towns still exist, but their importance in Oklahoma's history remains, meaning they've long lived past their prime. All right, again, the race massacre in Tulsa in 1921, all right, trickled down to these 50 other black towns in Oklahoma. These 50 other black towns in former Indian Territory. All right. And nothing prosperous about these towns exists today. All right, especially in the midst of the civil rights movement of the 1960s. All right. So with that, I appreciate y'all for tuning in. All right, ISUPK, Kentucky, under Commander General Yohana. Again, Lord willing, I'll be doing a Black History class all month long. All right, last week I talked about the civil rights movement. All right, this week we talked about all black towns in Indian Territory. And again, Lord willing, I'll be doing a Black History class, real Black History class. All right, real Black History you can't get nowhere else but the ISUPK under Commander General Yohana. All right, with that, fuck ICE. We'll go ahead on and end the class. We'll do a courtesy salute. All right, shalom. Yahweh B'Ashem Yahweh Shah Barakathon. Yahweh Shemalathon B'Ashem Yahweh Shah. Class dismissed.
You boy, you know what time it is, nigga. Better watch how you step in, yeah. But that was my niggas, yeah. I'm in it, yo. Got my nigga Rewan with me. But that was my niggas, it'll be an honor. You know what I'm saying? Under Commanding General. Shit ain't gon' stop till we on top and we ballin', my nigga. We be fly as fuck, you know them bitches be stalking my niggas. That shit'll never change and it's the same with all my niggas. City to city, I should be at home, that's what my ribs say. But bitch, I'm grown, I'm in these streets and closed caption. Niggas know we bout that action. If a nigga play with me, then my Hakim gon' let him have it. Hey, thank you the shit, this truth, this shit. Nigga play, I let that Ruger hit. Get on them tracks, they be like, who is this? I'm rude with it. The shit, y'all know they can't stand us, but we UPK, Louisiana, bitch, that's what I'm rippin'. And my niggas solid, number real ones in my section. If you wanna get down, put your boots on, start steppin'. Brotherhood is a weapon. Brotherhood is a weapon. Better watch how you steppin', cause brotherhood is a weapon. If I die for my niggas, it'll be an honor and a blessing. Better watch how you steppin', cause brotherhood is a weapon. Watch how you steppin', cause brotherhood is a weapon. If I die for my niggas, it'll be an honor and a blessing. Better watch how you steppin', cause brotherhood I lay my life down right now for all my sisters and brothers, because I love them. I see them dapping and hug them. It's amazing to see how well we adapt from the struggle. Born again from a life of sin, trapped in the